Okay, so good evening once again. So I was saying that after tomorrow, we have a session today, and definitely we already having a session today. We have a session tomorrow, and that will mark the end of our live sessions. However, lessons will continue throughout next week, so there should be 5 lessons next week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then by the end of the last lesson, that should be by next week Friday, there will be a final assessment just to follow up and see to it that you have been following the lessons. And then after the final assessment on Friday, by Saturday we walk around the collation and everything. And then by Saturday, Sunday, certificates will be sent over to everyone who has participated. I know this week there has been 4 lessons. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's supposed to be a lesson today, but it has not been dropped. I will do that tonight. Maybe immediately after this call, I will update so you can have a lesson you can take tonight, maybe into tomorrow, or at least just ensure you take it before Monday so that you will not have a lot of backlog. Please confirm you can still hear me. Just a reaction will do. Thank you. So I want to ask, just to be sure, how many of you have been following the lessons? You've been taking your lessons. You've been taking the lessons essentially. You can just signify by raising your hand or something. Or let me say it like this: you've taken all the lessons up to date. You don't have any backlog. Let me see your hand. Okay, one person. Interesting. So just one person has taken, does not have any backlog. Okay, you've taken some, but you have backlog. Maybe you have 1 or 2 lessons that you are yet to take, probably because of time. I don't know. Could you raise your hand? So, please, I've seen your hand. Please, could you drop your hand? Okay, thank you. So the last category is you've not had the time to take any lesson at all. Could you signify so at least we are aware? Okay, one person. Just one person. So the rest of us, what category do we belong? That's like the only 3 categories that can exist. You've taken all, you've taken some, you've taken none. So if you just like to sit on the fence. Anyway, so for those that have not taken their lessons or that have not completed it, I will urge you to do so. I will urge you to. One thing I know is that when it piles up, it's sort of very overwhelming. I know you can have other engagements. Maybe you're a student or you have a job, you're working, so it might not be easy. But the truth is, it's easier to take it one by one. That's why I made it such that it's not going to affect your the other things you do. That's why I divided into one each day, so that it can accommodate, or every other thing you are doing can accommodate it. So please just try to probably use the weekend to catch up with every other person. So thank you. Without wasting much of our time, let's get straight into what we have. So let me just quickly give you a glimpse into what we are doing. I have a presentation to present, and after the presentation, I'm going to take you through how you can use a section of our web application to enhance your learning, looking at the fact that you are already almost rounding up with the bootcamp. And also, I was supposed to take questions. Maybe, I said it in our last meeting that if you've been taking the lessons and you have questions, you could drop them in the comment of the videos. And if your question has nothing to do with the lessons, maybe you have something else entirely you would like to ask that the video has not covered, you can drop it in the community. So I was supposed to, this session, or there's a time allotted for that in this session where I just answer your questions that has been asked. But since nobody has dropped any question, I want to believe up till now you have no questions. For those that have not taken their lessons, maybe when you take yours, you should have questions. A proof that you are learning is that you have questions. Your curiosity should kick in. There should be things that are not clear, or probably things that conflict what you used to know or what you used to think or what you used to believe as true. those kind of things. So yeah, let me get straight into my presentation for today. Please confirm you can still see my screen and you can see my presentation. Just react. Thank you. All right. If you cannot hear me at any point, or maybe you can't see my screen again, feel free to just unmute and bring my attention to it. If you raise your hand, I'm not going to see it. Thank you. So today I want to talk about a very, very important aspect of learning French as an English speaker, particularly if you are still a beginner. So I titled it French versus English Sentence Structure. It's about mastering the internal logic, the word order, and grammatical machinery of the French language. Alright, so today I just want to pick points, the key differences, and what will build or what will give you a mental model before you now start building vocabulary to fill up those models. Because usually, in my experience, I feel like that's the best way to learn. Alright, so one of the biggest, let me get into it. One of the biggest reasons I believe that English speakers struggle with French is that they try to translate word for word. I mean, it feels logical, right? That you want to say something in French and you already know the English, just switch it, just translate the word. But French has its own internal logic. It has its own way of ordering its own ideas and sentences. It has its own grammatical machinery. So doing a translation, a word for word translation, sometimes or most of the times is not going to work. So when you try to force English structure into French words, the result is that you have sentences that are technically made of French, but in the real sense, they don't actually work. So, but once you understand some structural differences between the two languages, English and French, everything will start to click. You will stop fighting the language and the language will stop fighting you. Instead, you will start working with the language. So, today, as I said, I'm going to break down the most important differences between the two languages, their structure, and I'll give you examples that you can use immediately, and that should help you catch up quickly. So, next slide. So, the first key difference between French and English. I know I've said in the past that French and English have influenced each other. They share a lot of things in common. There are thousands of French words that once you see them in English, you can more or less figure out what they mean, because we call them true cognates, and they also, although I made mention of they are also false cognates. They are words that, even though yes, it looks like you know what it means, but what it means is actually very different from what you are seeing. But the number of false cognates we have is not up to the number of true cognates we have, which means that there are several words that when you see them, you know what it means out of the box. If you hear restaurant, nobody needs to tell you that that's restaurant. I mean, those are the words I'm talking about. So now, adjectives come after nouns. That's the first thing. Now, this is not all the time. I'll get there. But usually in French, adjectives comes after nouns. So in English, usually your adjectives will come before the noun. For example, let me give you an example. Let me use the example on my slide. A red car. The car is the noun. The red is the adjective. Adjectives are words that qualify or modifies nouns. So in English, the red comes before the car. But in French, it doesn't work like that. You are going to put the adjective after the noun. So it's more like saying a car red, something like that. The car is une voiture, red is rouge. So a red car in French becomes une voiture rouge. The second example on my screen is a difficult problem. The problem is the noun. Difficult is the word that is qualifying the noun. So difficult becomes the adjective. And if you want to say that, you would say un problème difficile. Exactly. So now, but there is an exception. The exception, there's an acronym that you can always use to remember the exception. And it is this BAGS, Bags Exception. The B stands for beauty, the A stands for age, the G stands for goodness, and the S stands for size. So if any word falls under these 4 categories, then you can place that adjective before the noun. Examples of words that fall under beauty: beautiful, pretty, ugly. Whether positive or negative, it falls under beauty. So if you want to say a beautiful woman, you would say, what's woman? Woman is femme in French. Beautiful is belle. Exactly. So you won't say it the way you just translated it in English from a beautiful woman. Sorry. That's generally about adjectives. I said that if any word that falls within the bags exception, you will use them like the way it exists in English, whereby the adjective will come before now. So a beautiful woman will become une belle femme. The second example on my screen is un joli jardin, which literally means a pretty garden. Joli means pretty, jardin means garden. Now, if any word falls, what are the words that can fall under age? Example, old. Something is old. That's telling you about the age of that thing. If something is young, that's also age. So if you want to use old as an adjective, young as an adjective, they will also come before the noun. The example you are seeing on my screen is un vieux monsieur, which means an old man. Une jeune fille, which means a young girl. Fille in French means girl. Jeune here means young. Now, the third one is goodness. There are words that fall under goodness. Example, good, bad. So if you want to say, I'm deliberately using the examples on my screen so that at least you can see it. If you want to say a good meal is the word repas. Good is the word bon. That's why when you say bonjour, it means good day. Bon means good, jour means day. If you have been taking the lessons, that should be very familiar. You should be very familiar with that by now. So if you want to say a good meal, you would say un bon repas. Un bon repas. Now, the second example I gave is une mauvaise idée. Une mauvaise idée. Idée means idea. Mauvaise means bad. So that literally means a bad idea. Now, the last one under the bags exception is size. Size. What words can fall under size? What adjectives? You have small, large or big. Or let's say other thing. Tall, short. Those kind of words. That one too can also fall under size. So the example you are seeing on my screen is une petite maison, which means a small house. I'm sure even if you have never learned French, when you hear something, if they say something is petite in English, you already know they are saying the thing is small. So it came from the word, this word you are seeing, petit. So the second one is un grand homme. Grand here means big, homme means man. So this is literally saying a tall man, or let me say a big man. It could also mean a great man, something like that. Let me just be sure. Confirm you can hear me and I am not speaking to myself. Thank you. All right. That's the first thing. Knowing the position of adjectives when you use them with nouns. But that's not all. That's not all about adjectives. There is another thing I would like to talk about adjectives, and it's how words can actually change meanings depending on whether they come before or after the noun. I'll give you an example in my next slide. Now, this is more like a comparison I did here. Adjective position can actually change the meaning of words. So don't just learn the bags exception. You have to also learn this. If an adjective, let me use grand for example. If an adjective comes before a noun, or let me say you put an adjective before a noun and you put it after that noun, the two statements can mean different things entirely. I'll give an example of what I'm saying. On grown home, you can see the meaning, it means a great man. While the second one, on grown home, means a tall man. Now you will notice that the first one actually sounds figurative, while the second one more or less describes something literal. The word great is figurative. So a lot of times when you use the adjective, when you see the adjective come before the noun, it could actually point to the fact that that statement or that phrase is a figurative phrase. While when the adjective comes after the noun, it could mean that it is not figurative, it is literal. So, grand before the noun would mean great, while grand after the noun would mean tall or big, something like that. The second example is ancien. Mon ancien professeur. Professeur in French means teacher. Ancien means, it can mean different things really. But in this example, mon ancien professeur, when ancien is used before the noun, means former, previous. But when it is used after the noun, it means ancient, something that is old. So you could see how, so in French, things are complicated. Pardon the language. Simple misplacement of positions can actually change entirely what the words mean. Please give me a minute. I'm coming. Someone's calling me. All right, sorry for that little break in transmission. So I was talking about the position of adjectives and how it affects the meaning of words. Now, because of time, let me just move to the next thing I want to talk about, and this is about negation. Negation. I don't know if some of you are familiar with how negation works in French, but in English, how you negate a statement is just by saying not. So if I say I am fine and you want to negate that, it becomes I am not fine. But in French, negation traditionally would wrap around the verb. So what you have to first of all do is to look for the verb in that statement. For example, just know that you are following me. If I say I speak French, who can tell me the verb in that statement? I speak French. What's the verb? Okay, Christabel, please go ahead. I thought your hand was up, Christabel. Okay, anyone? You can raise your hand if you want to talk. Anastasia, I see you are reacting. I don't know if that's a form of raising hand. Okay, Christabel is back. Christabel, please go ahead.
The verb in the sentence is speak.
Speak.
Which is parle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, sorry, I kept missing myself. So what you do is to look for the verb. So once you identify the verb, your problem is 50% solved. So in French, I speak French would be je parle français. Je parle français. Usually a basic sentence will have a subject, it will have a verb, and it will also have an object. I'll repeat what I just said. A basic sentence, the structure of a basic sentence is subject, verb, and object. So, je parle français, the subject there will be je, which means I. The verb there will be parle, which means speak, while the object there will be français. So, once you identify the verb, which is parle, All you need to do to make that statement or expression negative, somebody is not muted though. Christabel, please kindly mute. Thank you. So all you need to do to make that what was I saying? To make that, yes, that statement negative is to add no and pa to that statement. But you have to ensure that you had no ne. This ne is no, and the pas is pa. You had the no before the verb, you had pa after the verb, and that becomes negative. So I speak French will be je parle français. I don't speak French will be what? Je ne parle pas français. I'll say it again. Je ne parle pas français. Very correct. So negation, that's how negation works. You negate a sentence by adding no and pa. However, if you hear native speakers speak, or more or less in spoken French, most of the times they usually will drop that no. So you might not really hear the no a lot, but at least the pa will be very, very audible. So you know that, okay, this is a negative statement. Yeah. So, but negation is not just about no and pa. There are other expressions, negation or negative expressions in the French language that is in the negation family, and that's what is on the second box on my slide. So you have no jamais, which means never. You have no rien, which means nothing. You have no personne, which means nobody. You have no plus, which means no longer. So if I want to say something like I don't know, I would say je ne sais pas, because I know is je sais. Je ne sais pas means I don't know. What if I want to say I'm looking for examples, but the examples are not coming to my head. Let me look for a very simple example that okay, so let me use this one. Let's say you want to say something like I never eat sugar. I never eat sugar. Eat is manger. That's to eat. So if I want to say I eat sugar, I will say je mange de sucre. Sucre is sugar. So what if I want to say I never eat sugar, I will say something like je ne mange jamais de sucre. So instead of using pas, I will use jamais instead to mean never. But if I just want to say not, then I'll use pas. Now let's try and use rien, no rien. What if I want to say I see nothing, which can also mean I don't see anything. I see nothing. You won't use no pas, you will use no rien. So I see nothing will be, what's to see? To see is voir in French. So I see will be je vois. So if I want to say I see nothing, it will be je ne vois rien. Don't forget, the no and the rien has to always wrap the verb. So you have to always put the verb in between no and pas, in between no and jamais, in between no and rien, in between no and personne, in between no and plus. That's exactly how it works. So, but if the first challenge will be if you cannot even recognize the verb in that statement, then I don't think there's any progress you can make. Now, I've already talked about what is in the third box in my slide, which is in informal spoken French, native speakers frequently drop the no entirely. So you can hear something like je parle pas français, which means I don't speak French. In fact, sometimes you can even hear it almost like an N that is ending that je or the subject. Something like je ne parle pas français. Exactly. Next slide. Sorry, please give me another minute. This person just keeps calling me and I'm in a meeting. Okay, sorry. The person just kept calling, and back to what I was saying. So we are on the third difference, which is three ways to form questions. So yeah, there are ways that questions are formed in French, and it's a bit different from the way questions work in English. So if you want to ask a question, there are three ways you could go about it. The first one is intonation. I think I mentioned this. I don't know if it was the first meeting we had or the second meeting. I mentioned this before. That you could simply ask a question by saying a statement, but intonating that statement as a question. An example is what is on my screen. Tu parles français, which means you speak French. What if I want to ask, do you speak French? I can simply say, you speak French, and that actually qualifies as a question. In fact, that is what you hear the most. That's how French people talk the most, because usually people talk more casually than they talk formally. So you will hear something like tu parles français, or if I want to say do you know, I can simply say you know. So the intonation is what really matters to know whether is the person asking me a question or the person just making a statement. If I say tu parles français, the intonation is different. The words are the same, but the intonation is different. And intonation is what lets you know which one is a question and which one is a statement. The second example in my slide says tu vas où, which means you are going where. The actual question will be where are you going, but you can simply ask by saying you are going where. You speak French, and the person can answer yes, I speak French, something like that. So that's the most casual way of asking questions. Just raise your voice pitch at the end of the statements, and it becomes a question. The second way is by using esoko. But usually people you will not hear it like esoko. It's esco. So whenever you see this esco or maybe kesco, just know that you are being asked a question. So let's use the same sentence that we've been using. You speak French. Do you speak French? So if I want to say do you speak French and I want to ask using esco, I will say esco tu parles français, which means do you speak French? And that's about using esco. Esco is more or less like in the middle. It's formal. You can use it formally. You can use it informally. Nobody will penalize you. So it's formal, but you can also use it with your friends, so informally, essentially. So yeah, that's about the second way. The third one is inversion. Inversion is usually a simple statement will have the structure subject, verb, object. But to ask a question, all you need to do is to invert the subject and the verb. But usually, you have to know that the subject has to be a pronoun. So instead of saying tu parles français, which means you speak French, to make it a question, you just have to exchange the position of parle and tu. So tu, which is the subject, now you bring it to the middle, you bring the verb as the first word, and then you put an hyphen between them. So it becomes parles-tu français? That is a valid question. But note, this one is very formal. So you won't see people use it like a lot when they talk casually. So those are the three ways by which you can ask questions in French. Now, for questions that usually in English, there are question words. Examples of question words: who, what, where, when, why, how. Those are question words. In French, the same three method applies to asking that question. What is your name? How are you doing? Why did you come late? Etc. So the same method applies. So if I want to ask something like, where are you going? The word where is the word u, o and u, but the u has an accent. As you can see on my screen, this is the u I'm talking about here. So if you don't put the accent, don't worry. I think by next week there should be a lesson on accents, so it should break down any challenge you might have about that. If you don't put an accent, the word ou becomes another word. So the accent is what makes it where. Otherwise, it will mean or, because that's also u, but without an accent. So if I want to say where are you going, u is where, this tu is you, va is a conjugated word, conjugated form of the verb aller, which means to go. So to va who means where are you going? So if I want to use esco, I will say something like u esco tu va, which means where are you going? And if I want to use the inversion, I will say va tu, which means where are you going? Exactly. So let me move on because our time is actually fast spent. It's 38. So as a learner, I would advise that you actually master the ESCO, the second one, because it seems to be the safest. You can use it whether you are talking formally or informally. So if you learn that, it works everywhere and it will never sound wrong. So now let me move to the next slide, which is the fourth thing. Please confirm you can still hear me and I'm not speaking to myself. Thank you. So the next thing I want to talk about is the preverb object pronouns. The preverb object pronouns. Now, this is one of the most disorienting differences for English speakers, to be very truthful. Because in English, object pronouns comes after the verb. What is an object pronoun? For example, I see him. There are two pronouns in that statement. There is I, there is him. I is the subject pronoun because I is the taker of that action. Him is the object pronoun because him is the receiver of that action. So that's why it is an object. So in French, contrary to how English uses their own structure, or how English has their own structure, object pronouns actually come before the verb in French. So instead of saying I see him, in French the structure will look like I him see, something like that. It doesn't make sense in English, but that's correct French. So if I want to say I see him, you will say je le vois. Je le vois. You will say je vois l'eau or je vois l'eau using Nigerian accent. You will say je le vois. Do you understand? That's exactly how object pronouns work. If you want to say she calls me, she in French is elle. To call is appeler. Me is moi. So you have to put the me, the moi, or mo before the appel. So when you put that, it becomes elle m'appelle. So that's exactly how the structure works. However, there's an exception. Whenever you are using the imperative, which is usually commands, the pronoun will shift back to coming after the verb. An example of imperative statements: give it to me, stand up. That's imperative. That's imperative. For example, I want to say stand up, I will say levez-vous. I will say levez-vous. Levez-vous means to stand up. Lever is the verb. Vous is the noun. The pronoun. Vous means you. So that's a pronoun. So levez-vous means stand up. And in that you will see that the vous actually comes after, not before. That's because it is imperative. It is more like a command. So that's exactly how preverb object pronouns work. Next slide. Next thing I want to talk about quickly is verb conjugation. Don't worry, this conjugation, if you know conjugations well, I think you have solved about 50% of the entire French problem, because conjugation is a very, very, very big aspect of French. Now, what is conjugation? Conjugation is, how can I explain this thing in a very, very simple way? It's like usually you conjugate verbs, right? In French, just like in English, you use different subjects with, if I want to say, I speak, I is different from you. They both mean the same thing. Exactly. That's exactly how it works in French. But you use the same form of verb with different pronouns in English, different subjects. I speak, you speak, we speak, they speak. I think it's only he and she that becomes he speaks in the singular. She speaks. But every other one is the same speak you use. But in French, verbs don't work like that. Verbs have different forms depending on the subject. Depending on who is carrying out that action, you use different form of the verb. So if I want to say I speak, speak is the word parler, to speak, to talk. That's parler. Now that verb parler is spelled P-A-R-L-E-R. That verb parler has several forms, and the form you use is actually dependent on the subject that you are attaching to that verb, the taker of that action. If I want to say I speak, I will say je parle. If I want to say you speak, I'm not going to use the same form, because you actually has its own form that is different from je, that is different from I. So je parle, to parle, they sound the same, but the spellings are different. If I want to say we speak, we has its own form that is different from jo and tu. So we speak will become nous parlons. You speak in the formal what's the word now? In the formal sense will be vous parlez. So you can see that the verbs sound differently based on, and the verbs actually change. It changes its form based on the person, the taker of that action, which is usually the subject pronoun. And that affects all French verbs. Don't worry, conjugation is a thing that you will spend a lot of time learning. Actually, you don't have to cram them because they have a structure. They have a way. There's a way they work for most verbs, and usually even verbs that even have class. For example, there is what we call the ER verbs. There is the IR verbs. There are several forms of verbs. So, and there are things to learn about them, but you don't have to cram. You don't have to cram. In fact, let me just mention this before I move on. Sometimes if you hear native speakers talk, they drop the subject, which is the taker now, the taker of the action. They drop it in their statements. Why? Because French verbs, unlike English verbs, more or less gives you an idea of who is taking that action. If I say parlons, P-A-R-L-O-N-S, it can never be je. It has to always be nous. So you already know that the person that is taking this action is nous, which means we in English. If I say parler, P-A-R-L-E-Z in English, you know it has to be vous. So even if I don't use the vous, because the verb in itself already has its form, you already know that, okay, it is vous they are talking about. It cannot be nous. It cannot be tu. Who is following what I'm saying? You just react or something. Thank you. So conjugation is what explains how verbs have several forms based on the subject pronoun or the taker of that action. So now that's about conjugation. Let's move to the other part of my slide, which is past tense distinctions. A fun fact about French is that I don't even think a lot of people know. French has about 16 tenses. 16. I mean, the day I found out, I was very wowed. 16 tenses. Yes, not all of them are used in today's speaking and writing, but 16 tenses actually exist in the French language. I think about 5 or 6 are usually used often, but the tenses are more than 6 or 5. So, but when we are talking about past actions, there are 2 core tenses with distinct meanings. There's what we call the passé composé, and there's the imparfait. Now, the passé composé, both of them are past tense, right? But the passé composé speaks of past tense in the completed sense. For example, to eat, I already said it earlier, is manger. So if you want to say I I eat or I am eating, you will say je mange. If you want to say I ate, now I ate or I have eaten suggests that that action has been completed. You are done eating. I ate. I have eaten. You will say j'ai mangé. Don't worry about how they came about j'ai mangé. We'll explain in future lessons. But that's the correct. I'm not explaining how it came to be like that. But I'm just telling you that there's distinction. So you say j'ai mangé, which means I ate, I have eaten. But what if you want to talk about an ongoing action or maybe something that is habitual, like saying I used to eat, maybe in the morning, something like that, or I was eating. Now, when you say I was eating, it does not suggest that that action has been completed. Even though, yes, it is in the past, but in the context of usage, that action is not completed because you were doing something, you were taking out that action, and that is what the sentence is referring to. I was eating when you entered, which means that at the point when you entered, the action was ongoing. So even though here it's past tense, but you call it en parfait. So the action was ongoing at the point of speech or point of usage. So you will say je mangeais, which means I was eating. So these are the distinctions that you will have in the French. Don't worry, in the future lessons you'll be able to understand very clearly the difference, how to use passé composé, how to use en parfait, and how to use them across all the verbs that at least common verbs that you will come across often. All right, let's move to the next thing, which is about possession. Possession structure. Now, French has a way of describing possession, of actually talking about possession. The first news I want to break is that French does not have apostrophes like we have in English, where you can say Paul's book, James' laptop, the teacher's pen. French does not have that. It does not have any direct equivalent to how English uses its own possessive, how English uses apostrophe to talk about possession. So if I say Paul's book, that's me saying the book that belongs to Paul, something like that. In French, you actually use the word do. The word do means of, and that is what you use for possession. So if I want to say Paul's book, in French, you have to actually say the book of Paul. If I want to say the teacher's pen, I have to say the pen of the teacher. If I want to say, let me look for more examples. Just look for anything that talks about possession, anything at all. Let's say my friend's house. You will say the house of my friend. That's exactly how you will talk in French. So let's look at the example on my screen. Paul's book. Book is livre. That's book in French. But I said in last session I was saying that when you are learning nouns, always try to learn them with their article, because articles are very important. Because French nouns have genders. It could be masculine, it could be feminine. So instead of learning livre, learn le livre, because livre is a masculine word. So le livre, that's book. What of Paul? Paul is Paul anyway. Then the book of Paul. I already said do means of. So if you want to say Paul's book, you will say le livre de Paul, which literally means in English Paul's book. If I want to say the teacher's pen, I will say the pen of the teacher, which means the pen is le stylo. Stylo, that's pen. Teacher is professeur. So I will say the pen, which is le stylo du professeur. Now, if you have been following my slide, or if you're actually following me, maybe you should have a question at this point. Why is the first one do and the second one do? Why is there a difference? The reason why there is a difference is because, don't forget what I said, do means off. But if somebody raising their hand or something, you cannot see my slide. Please, any other person should talk. Can anyone see my slide? Can anyone hear me at all? Okay, let me stop sharing and share again, just for the sake of the person that cannot see my slide. Please, is my screen um is my screen visible now? Please, I need
Yes, sir.
reactions. Yusuf, please, can you see my screen now? Please, I think it will come up. If you can't see it still, our time is fast spent. We have just 7 more minutes, and I still have a couple of things to talk about. Let's just hope it comes up. If it doesn't come up, you can rewatch the recording that will be uploaded online. So, I was explaining the difference between do, and do. Now, the simple explanation is that in the first example, there is nothing like the book of Paul. But if you look at the second example, is the pen of the teacher. So do here is actually of the, while do is just ordinarily of. So in French, I will this don't worry, this is should be the lesson for Tuesday. This is explained in that lesson. When you want to use in the letter D in English can be lo, it can be la, it can be le, it can also be L with an apostrophe in French. So which one you use is dependent on the gender of the word. So if it's masculine, you use lo. If it's feminine, you use la. If it is plural, you use le. If it is a word that starts with a vowel, then you use L apostrophe because it starts with a vowel. So here, there is a contraction that is happening. It's actually supposed to be lo stilo do lo professeur, because professeur is a masculine word, so it has to be lo professeur. But in French, when you contract do and lo, it becomes do. If this word is a feminine word, it will have been lo stilo do la professeur. But whenever it is do and lo, you have to contract it to become do. That's the reason why you can see do here. So let me move on from there. Let me move to the second thing I was talking about. Sorry, the second thing on my slide, which is possessive matches item gender. I think I've talked about that. So in French, gender is very, very, very important. Nouns have gender, pronouns follow suit, adjectives follow suit. So if I want to say is car, a car, contrary to what you might think that is car, that already means the person is a male, a car is a female. In French, when you want to talk about is car a car, you don't really take into consideration the owner of the car. What you have to take into consideration is the gender of the noun you are talking about, which is car. So what's car in French? Voiture, that's car. Car is a feminine word. So anytime you want to talk about car, whether the owner is a female or male, it does not matter. What matters is the gender of the word, which is feminine. So his car is sa voiture. A car is sa voiture. Now, is book a book? I said earlier, book is a masculine word. So it will be son livre, son livre. So whether the person that you are referring to in that statement is a man or a woman, you will still use son livre because the word itself is masculine. I don't have much time to buttress that. I hope it's clear enough. Now, let me quickly talk about structure comparison matrix. I just put a matrix in my slide to more or less buttress what I have said. Everything in this slide I've actually explained. I've talked about adjective order before a noun and after a noun. I've talked about the bags exception rule. I've also talked about the figurative and literal expressions when using adjectives. I've talked about negation, and the other words in the negation family outside not, because it's not just not. I've talked about object pronouns, I've talked about possession, and I've talked about verb conjugations. Move to the next thing. So, mental model, building your mental model. Everything I've said so far, the understanding of these structural differences is not, I'm not saying it's going to make you fluent overnight, right? But one thing it will do is that it will stop you from making the same foundational mistakes over and over again. So every time you catch yourself trying to translate directly from English, you can pause and then apply the correct French structure and build the right habits. So over time, when you learn to speak rightly or to use the right structures from an early stage, that repetition actually slowly graduates into instinct. So it becomes instinctive, and you will not have to consciously be mindful of those rules over time. So the goal is for you to internalize them through enough practice, and then over time it becomes automatic. So build the mental model first, then over time you are going to get them filled up with vocabulary. So practice these structures until it disappears into instincts. Some English also has its own nuance. There are some things that work in English, and you'll be wondering why is it like this. For example, how do you pronounce rough? And then there's another word that ends with UGH that is not off, that does not have that does not rhyme with rough. But you learnt it by repetition, and over time it just stuck in your head, and you don't have to wonder why why dough is not dough. So that's exactly what I am talking about. So fluency is built through understanding, not memorization. You don't have to memorize. So if you look at what I put on my screen, I think I've talked about everything. So I said stop translating, pause, word for word translation, more or less internalize your structural differences and try to use them deliberately. Then I also said you should learn pronoun combinations. Instead of learning just words, I think it's better to learn phrases. For example, if you know that je le vois means I see him, it's not about je le vois, it's about words that also follow that same pattern of je le vois. So the third thing here is master defaults. I already said you should learn learn how to use ESCO, KESCO to ask questions. It will save you a lot of stress. And then the fourth thing is practice and repeat. Now we have a community that helps you practice. That also helps you maybe practice your French with real people. But outside the community, I quickly want to show something. Our time is actually up. But I hope you can just do this in like 5-10 minutes before we call it a night. I want to quickly show you how you can leverage on our language studio to improve your learning. So I'm going to go to our web application. Just go to ParleAfrica.com. There is a walkthrough video that I put on the page. I'm not sure if some of you have gone through it. If you have gone through it, you should be able to see this that I'm about to show you. Just so you go to studio. If you go to studio, if you're on your phone, you're not going to see this structure. It's not going to look like this on your phone. That's what I'm saying. You probably see an hamburger icon that when you click on that icon, you can then see all these links: community lessons, leaderboard, studio. So all you need to do, just click on studio. When you click on studio, it's going to take you to the studio. Now in the studio, there are about 6 applications here that you can use to help your learning. Please confirm you can see my screen and you can still hear me. Alright, so let me get back to share my screen. Alright, so in the studio, this is a real translator app that you can use to translate words from French to English, from English to French, and you can even translate from Pidgin English to French. So let me use Pidgin because of time. So let's say I want to translate from Pidgin to English to French. Something like that. So I can just say, how una dey. Now, why do we have Pidgin English? Because We are building for the African market. We are Africans, and Africans also use pidgin, particularly Nigerians. So you can see that it actually could recognize and can translate from pidgin into French directly. And you can also do the same from English to French. If I say, what is your name? Skeleton, no. So that's exactly how this works. Translation works. You can use the translator app rather, to translate words as you learn new vocabulary or you came across a word you don't know. Now, the next sort of app here is the vocabulary app, which essentially gives you a list. So let's assume I am learning words about, let me give you a category. Let's say I'm learning words about travel, or let's say I'm learning words about greetings. You can literally create a new group. I call it lists. Let's say create a list name. Let's say greetings, or let me say food. Let's say I'm learning food. I'm learning about food. Nigerian food. Just write anything really. I'm just trying to do this to test or to show you guys what you can do. So under this group, under this list, I can add words every day as I am learning. So let's say I want to learn about food, rice, beans, potato. Rice is the word "riz" in French, but let's say I don't even know. I want this thing to give me the word. All you need to come here is to say, I know English, which means I know the English, I don't know the French. Just put it rice. And then you just click on this AI autofill and add, it will give you the meaning and it will add it to your vocabulary list. So you could see that it has added one word to this and it is "re." You can also click on this icon here for you to pronounce it out so that you can hear how it actually sounds in French. And then you can choose to come and delete it if you don't want it again. That's exactly how it works. And you will see that it gives you a sentence example, how to use this word in a sentence in both English and French. J'ai mangé du riz pour déjeuner, which means I ate rice for lunch. So you can add as many words into this vocabulary as you are making progress learning them. So then you can also click on review if you want to review the word, more like a game kind of thing. Let's say you have 10 words and you want to review them. You can just click on bring you see here. So you can click on it to review the meaning for you. Just more or less go over them one by one over again as you master those words. Let's move from there to pronunciation. So this one helps you with pronunciation. So let's say you don't know how to pronounce a sentence or a phrase that you have been learning. You can simply come and put it here. Comment vous... Let me just say, my name is Paul. Moi, c'est Paul. So if I click on analyze pronunciation, it will actually give me the transcription of this word, of this sentence, and I can actually listen to it. It will read it out for me in French so I can hear how it is pronounced in French. It will give me pronunciation tips on how to pronounce this word. It will give me tips and guides on how to pronounce it. It will even give you a common mistake people make and how to not make that mistake. You can see common mistake. Nigerians often pronounce moi more likely moi, which is incorrect. So that's exactly what you can do with this. And you can also save a word. Let's say now I have learned this word, but I want to save it into my vocabulary and I don't want to come to vocabulary. I can just click on save here. It will bring up a small modal where I can choose to save it in any of the groups I have created. So let's say this word, I want to save it inside this group folder. I just need to click on food and it will save that word. It has saved it. If I go back to my vocabulary, I should see that word in my can you see I have two words here. I have "re" and I have this "moi c'est Paul." I can choose to listen to it. I can also do the same from the translator app. Let's say I want to save this word to my vocabulary. I can save it from here and just save it. So that's exactly how this works. The next one is the grammar check. This one can help you. You can paste maybe a paragraph or an essay, you can paste it into this thing and it will analyze the grammar for you. If there are mistakes, it will analyze it. If it will give you corrections, it will just help you with grammar and how you can correct yourself when you write. So let me just give you a simple example. Let me say I went to the market. I'll deliberately write it wrongly so you can see what I am saying. I went to the market is supposed to be je suis allé let me say supermarché. Now, I'll deliberately not put the accent and write it like this. Let me see if it will correct my grammar. So you could see it gives me a 60% score, one issue found, and it tells me the issue. It gives me the corrected version of how to write it, and it gives me the meaning in English. It gives me the error, and it gives me a grammar tip of how not to make the same mistake again. So that's exactly how grammar. So you can paste different things here and to check for your grammar. You can also save it to your vocabulary list from here. You can choose to listen to it. You can play it.
allé au supermarché.
So it will read it out in French. You can also copy the word and paste it wherever you want to paste it. All right, let's move to phrase alternatives. Phrase alternatives is usually just saying, okay, I know this word in French, or I know this sentence, I know how to say this in French. Can you give me other ways of saying the same thing? So if I want to say my name is Paul, I can say je m'appelle Paul. Je m'appelle Paul. Now, give me other ways of saying my name is Paul in French. It will bring it out. So you can say it gives me 5 other alternatives of saying the same thing. This is my original thing that I put there. You can see it says 5 ways to say it. You can say je suis Paul, which means I am Paul. This is the informal way of saying it. You can copy it. It gives you an explanation to why that is like that. You can also say je me nomme Paul. You can say mon nom est Paul. You can say je me prénomme Paul. You can also say c'est moi Paul. And you can do that for literally any sentence. The maximum word you can have is 300 words. So it shows you how much of usage you have. The last one is conjugation drill, and I feel like this is like the most important application for you here as a learner. This helps you with verbs. I talked about conjugation, but not extensively while I was doing my presentation. Let's assume I want this thing to help me conjugate a verb. All you need to do is to put the verb there. Parler. I already told you what parler means earlier. Parler means to speak. Don't forget, I told you we have different tenses. I said we have up to 16 different tenses in French, but these are the most common used tenses. We have the présent, which is the present. We have the passé composé, which is past. We have the imparfait. I've talked about imparfait. We have the futur simple, which is the future tense. We have the conditionnel. We have the subjunctive. So if I want to say, okay, let me conjugate this verb in the present, I can also choose passé composé. I can choose any of the tenses. And then I click on conjugate. It will conjugate this for me, and I can see all the different conjugations. So it is je parlerai, tu parleras, elle parlera, nous parlerons, vous parlerez, elles parleront. I can choose to save it to my vocabulary if I want to save it. I can choose to read it aloud, and I can also choose to. It also gives me a small tip here on notes I should take when I'm doing conjugation. You can also start a drill where this is like classwork of what you have been learning. So you can write it. What form of the word parler goes with il or elle? Now put it there. Parleront. Check. Correct. Next. So that's exactly what you can do here. Let me go back. And then there's something else that will be added to this, which is currently in the works, is conversation. We want you to be able to maybe have a conversation with, let's say, Cisco, which is our AI assistant. Let's say now you don't want to talk to a human being. Don't forget we said we have as accountability groups that you can join with your friends, keep yourself accountable as you are learning French. But what if I just want to talk to an AI where I and Cisco AI or our AI agent here can have a conversation in French? You can have a conversation with it as though you are talking to a real human being. It can correct your grammar for you, tell you that, okay, what you said is wrong, this is how to say it. Any conversation at all. That's in the works and it will soon be released very soon. So you can watch out for that feature. All this is just to ensure that you are learning, and we are coming up with tools and things that can really accelerate and aid your learning. So this is what you can use, and it is, at least for now, if you have an account, you should be able to access this and use it as you are using our application. There's also a blog part where you can actually read blogs every week. A blog article drops every week, so you can watch out. It literally drops on Tuesday, so you can always watch out for on Tuesdays. Come here. By next week Tuesday, you should see another one, and that's how the blogs work. So when you come here, you see blogs that when you read them, it helps you. At least there's one or two things you'll be learning from each blog. That's what I believe. So let me just come to an end. I spent 13 extra minutes, but I think it is worth it. So that will bring me to the end of my presentation today. I want to believe you learned one or two things from everything that has been presented. So, as I said, a lesson is going to drop tonight. I'll put it on the group when we post the lesson. Try to ensure that you take your lessons. Don't postpone them. Take your lessons. And we'll have a class tomorrow, which is our final live class. When you take a lesson, I'll repeat. If you have questions, drop them in the video that you just watched, the video of the lesson. If your question is not related to the video you watched, or maybe you have a question right now, maybe something I talked about that wasn't clear, you can go to the community here. Go to the community here, make a post, which can be anything. Drop your question. The advantage is that I'm not the only person that will see it. A lot of other people will also see it, and they can even pick up your question and answer for you. So that will be it for tonight. Does anybody have anything to say before I call it an evening? Anything at all? All right, Akintoye officer, please go ahead. Sorry, I cannot hear you. Your voice is very low. I don't know if I'm the only one, but your voice is still low.
I was actually using speaker, so
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yes, very audible now. Please go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you now.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please. I can hear you. I can hear you.
I want to ask about the it means to read in English.
Is it just me?
One thing it is say, is it still the same no or there's another French word?
Sorry, I only heard the last part of your question. Everything you said before the last part, I did not hear. Can you repeat it?
Do you know? It is. You said it is read in English.
Yes, please.
So what if it is like they? Is it still the same thing since they are both like plural in English? Is it still the same or there's another French word for it?
Okay, you are asking if they is the same word as we in French, right?
Yes. Like yes.
No, they are not the same word. In French, there is nous as we, but if you want to use they, you can either use il or elle. Let me put it in the chat so you can see what I'm saying. Il or elle. So you see that
Yes.
now il is masculine, elle is feminine. So if the they you are referring to if they are male, you use il. If they are females, you use elle. Do you understand?
Okay.
All right. And as I said
I think
earlier,
that
this verb you are going to use with it is different from the one you will use with other subject pronouns.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question before we go? All right, our time is fast spent. In the absence of no questions, let's call it a night. I wish you guys a wonderful night and see you tomorrow. Thank you.